Oh, what time is it? I just woke up. But Formula One is back? What's going on, guys? Welcome back, and welcome back, Formula One. After a second summer break, as it would seem, or maybe it's more of a fall break at this point, Formula One is back here in the United States for the US Grand Prix here in Austin, Texas, racing around Circuit of the Americas, one of my personal favorite weekends on the F1 calendar. I hope it is one of yours as well. It always seems to provide some interesting action both on the track and after the race is even over, as we saw last year. I think we're in for a very fun one this year as well, and once again I will be there. So if you're interested in seeing some behind the scenes live at the track action, you can follow me on all my socials down in the link below. I'm going to be trying to post a lot more this year than I did last year. Of course, last year I ended up getting shingles while I was there, and ultimately it kind of really took the energy of the weekend from up here to really far down here. So this year hopefully is going to go a lot better, because I don't know if it could get much worse. But that's not what we're here for right now. We are here right now to talk about our predictions for this weekend's Grand Prix. It is a sprint race weekend. I know it has been a very long time since we've had a sprint race weekend, and so I kind of almost forgot about them for a good stretch of time there. But nonetheless, it is a sprint weekend this weekend around Circuit of the Americas, and it is going to be an interesting one to say the least. A lot of very interesting storylines with Liam Lawson making his return, a lot of teams bringing upgrades, a lot of teams bringing some special one-off liveries that I'm going to touch on at some point during this video, and all in all, a very fun weekend awaits. All of us are rabid for some more F1 action, and it's finally back. But let's go ahead, let's kick this thing off with our predictions, with our biggest positive surprise. Before we get into our biggest positive surprise, if you haven't already, subscribe down below if you enjoy F1 or sim racing content. We do a lot of that here on this channel. We love talking about it, and we'd love to have you join our little community here. Also, leave a comment down below with your predictions as we go through them as well. I'd love to see what you guys think is going to happen this weekend, and I think it's going to be very, very fun, and we'll see who can come out on top in terms of getting the most predictions correct when the weekend is all said and done. And as always, if you like the video at any point, leave a like rating on the video. It really helps me out, helps us reach more people, and try and grow our small little community as it is right now. But let's go ahead, let's jump on into our biggest positive surprise. This week I have gone for Lewis Hamilton for my biggest positive surprise at the US Grand Prix. For whatever reason, Lewis just seems to gel with the US very, very much, and I think he always seems to perform very well, especially at Circuit of the Americas, where even the last couple of years, albeit last year was a bit of a special case with his disqualification from the podium, but that said, not too shabby to say the least. Now, with that said, I think it's very impressive the way that Lewis has been able to perform, especially in the years past. In 22, I believe he finished on the podium, and then last year was also going to finish on the podium once again. In a couple of years where Mercedes were not looking particularly great, to say the least. And so I think all in all, Lewis just seems to do very well here at COTA, and I think it's going to continue this weekend. I know Mercedes has kind of been all over the place in the last couple of rounds, but that said, they still look fairly strong, and I think Lewis always is going to compete in the US, and so that's why for my biggest positive surprise, I've gone for Lewis Hamilton. Alright, let's continue on with our biggest disappointment, and for this US Grand Prix, I have gone for Liam Lawson. And now I need to preface this by saying that I don't think Liam is necessarily going to have the worst weekend out of anyone up and down the grid, but I do think that there is an air about this VCARB car in this season in that team and sort of in the lower half of the grid that just really feels like this could be a distinct possibility. I do think that Liam might struggle a little bit. The VCARB car this year is not as good, I think, as even last year's AlphaTauri was, and I think it's definitely going to be an interesting situation with him having, basically almost a month lead up to his first race back in Formula One, and jumping into a car for the first time in a sprint race weekend where there's only going to be one practice session before you immediately jump into qualifying. Definitely is going to be a tall task for the young man. Can you still call him a rookie if he competed last year? I don't know. Let me know down in the comment section below if that's still a valid title for him. But regardless, I think this could be a weekend where I wouldn't be too surprised to see him finish behind Yuki, kind of be behind him on pace, most of the weekend. Now that said, I definitely see Liam performing very well against Yuki as the rest of this season winds down, but in his first race back in weird situations like this, I think it could be a slightly disappointing first weekend out for him. Now that said, it's also entirely possible that he completely, reverses this one on me and just comes out firing, scores a bunch of points, and I look like an idiot. But for some reason, I just feel like Yuki is just going to continue to be on his pace that he has been. And while it's hard to tell exactly how it's been going, Yuki definitely looks like he was much stronger compared to Daniel Ricciardo. And I think it could lead to a lot of confidence as Liam Lawson steps in and those two start going at it. Let's move on ahead to our qualifying and top three. As with sprint weekends, this is our qualifying for the Grand Prix on Sunday. So this will be the qualifying that takes place on Saturday and then sets the grid for the race on Sunday. Starting in P3, I have gone for Oscar Piastri. Oscar driving very, very well here recently, especially this year. That said, it definitely seems to lack a little bit of the qualifying pace consistency. Now, we saw him finish a lot of qualifying on the front row, and then now recently in Singapore, most recently, he struggled to qualify quite as well as we think he really can. It's going to be interesting to see what he can do out here at Circuit of the Americas in his second time around the track. But the McLaren still far and away the best car on the grid, and I do think Oscar will have a nice bounce back performance in qualifying, especially considering he'll already have a qualifying session under his belt and a sprint race as well before the Grand Prix qualifying begins. So he'll be very, very tuned to the track in race and qualifying conditions already, and I think it's going to do him well enough to put it P3 on the grid for Sunday's race. Moving on to P2, I almost said Q2. Moving on to P2 in qualifying, I've gone for Max Verstappen. Now, Red Bull are supposedly bringing a bunch of upgrades, which are supposed to apparently just unravel and kind of roll backwards and try and right the wrongs of developments past. And so if it actually succeeds and if they manage to get the performance out of those components like they expect, and they're able to get the setup correct, Red Bull is still very much in the hunt for, front of the grid. I mean, far and away. I mean, they have fallen off, yes, and McLaren has taken a step up, but that said, Red Bull is still right there most of the time, and it always feels like Max is there no matter what. So I think this could be an instance where we see Red Bull kind of take that leap forward, and while a lot of their design ideals and paths as they have moved forward have not worked recently, if they're working backwards and effectively just going, okay, that didn't work, what will work, I think we could see a bit of a small resurgence from Red Bull as they try and finish this season strong. So Max, you're my pick for the front row start, P2. And then that leaves only my pick for pole position, Lando Norris. I think this is going to a cut and dry Lando Norris pole position written all over it. The McLaren is the best car on the grid. Lando has been driving very, very confidently. He knows he has to have these results if he wants to have any chance at a World Drivers' Championship as this season winds down. Now that said, I think it will be enough to put it on pole position. I think it will be enough to fight for a win, but it's going to be very tight, and it's going to get actually very exciting if we actually do get a Max and Lando front row start, especially with that iconic shot up into turn one off the race start, 100 plus feet into the air, tight little left-hander at the top of a hairpin at the top of a tall hill. Man, can we just briefly decide that the shot that you get from the paddock side up towards turn one at race start with the turn one hill just absolutely packed full of people is iconic, and I can see it in my head, and it's going to be glorious this year, especially if we get a nice front row grid like we do here in my predictions. So that said, we have a Lando Norris pole position, a Max Verstappen P2, and an Oscar Piastri rounding us out in P3. All right, a special prediction because it is a sprint race weekend. That means we get to make a prediction for sprint winner. And this is where I am choosing to go a little bit different than everyone else. We have seen this man perform very well in sprints before. We have seen him win a sprint before. That's right, I'm going for Oscar Piastri to win the sprint race this weekend. I think this could be an instance where a sprint race maybe gets a little chaotic at the beginning. First real on-track racing action after another very long break. I think things could get a little spicy, opening things up just enough for our little Aussie boy to slip into the lead, and eventually, as we know, sprint races eventually turn into is very processional, a lot about just holding pat and just kind of just going in a straight line and not really too many overtake opportunities. So I think this could be a potential instance where Oscar, kind of similar to how he was in Qatar when he won his sprint race last year, could be an instance where Oscar just kind of finds himself at the front and will take a win if the option, I mean, obviously he's going to take a win if the opportunity presents itself. So Oscar, you're my pick for sprint winner. So here we are, Sunday evening, the race is finished, and we are here to make predictions for our race. Podium will begin in P3, and I have gone for Lewis Hamilton. I think this is going to be a classic Lewis Hamilton race where his qualifying may not be quite as up to snuff as it needs to put it in the top 3 at the beginning, but it always seems to be the case. His race pace seems to be next level. I think it's going to lead him to a podium this weekend around Circuit of the Americas. It always seems to happen. He's effectively podiumed each of the last few years. Again, minus his and Charles DQ from this race last year. He runs very, very well. I think this could be a very good instance of just his experience in the sport and just always seeming to be in the right place at the right time here in Austin, Texas. And I think we're going to see Lewis finish P3 in this weekend's Grand Prix. Moving on to P2, it's going to sound a familiar name. It's going to be Max Verstappen once again in P2. This is going to be an instance, I think, of always Max potentially not getting the most out of getting the most out of the car, but it just not being quite enough. And he'll finish as high as he possibly can with the performance of the car underneath him, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be enough, and they'll combine this with my prediction for P1. My race winner here at Austin, Texas, is going to be Lando Norris. I think this could be another weekend where we see Max and Lando kind of go at it briefly before the performance of the McLaren outpaces the Red Bull, and we see Lando kind of build that comfortable gap out front that leads to a fairly easy win. But that said, Max, I think, will take ultimate damage limitation by finishing P2, and potentially even depending on how the race shakes out, because as we know, Circuit of the Americas is a very interesting track when it comes to what the demands that it puts on a car. Could also potentially try and opt for a fastest lap as well, or deploy one of their many other drivers to attempt to take the fastest lap from them for themselves. And so I think there's going to be another instance of Lando getting a win, doing what he needed to do, but not being quite enough from weekend to weekend, with Max doing maximum damage limitation and finishing P2. So there you have it, my prediction for the race podium this weekend at Circuit of the Americas: a Lewis Hamilton P3, a Max Verstappen P2, and a Lando Norris win. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know down in the comment section below. All right, let's round this out with our one crazy prediction. And this weekend, I have gone for the home team. A prediction about the Haas F1 team. It recently announced a partnership with Toyota. Very exciting for us Haas fans. I think that's going to be very, very fun, starting basically from, maybe not we're going to see the benefits of it now, but I do think that it's going to be very interesting from next year on. I'm very excited to see what the influences Toyota can have and continue to try and develop Haas up the order. I am all for it. But that said, my one crazy prediction is about Haas, and I think it's going to be a big weekend for Haas. They performed very, very well, and I do dare say that they might be pretty clearing away the 6th fastest car now, and I think it's about time that we really put in some good points on the board. So my one crazy prediction this weekend for the US Grand Prix is that Haas will score points in both races. That's right, I think we're going to score points in the sprint race as well as the full Grand Prix on Sunday. I think it's going to be a very, very fun weekend for Haas, who potentially, depending on how VCARB does, could overtake VCARB for P6 in the constructors standings, leading down to the last 5 or so races of the year. I think it's going to be a very fun weekend. I'm hoping it's true. It'll be a lot of fun to get to celebrate some very solid results for once, because Haas always seem to have those rare occasions where their races are very, very well. It just never seems to be in my neighborhood. I want to be there. I want to feel it in the universe, and I think we're going to get it this weekend. Well, there we have it, guys. That is what I think is going to happen this weekend, the 2024 US Grand Prix. What do you guys think is going to happen? Let me know. And if you're interested in jumping in for the remaining races of the season into our little predictions challenge, as you noticed across this video, a black bar with our community predictions appearing along the bottom. If you're interested in enjoying and joining in on the fun that we have over in Discord, you can find the link down below. Join the Discord, and then leading up to every Grand Prix weekend, I'll make a call for these same predictions. Then you'll have your opportunity to make your predictions, and we'll see who comes out on top when the weekend is all said and done. Once again, subscribe if you haven't already. It really helps me out. And turn on notifications so you don't miss a single upload. We'll see you after the race weekend is over, and we'll see how our predictions fared. But for now, that's going to wrap it up for me here in this one, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.